This is Christian Gomez with the New American Magazine here at the Red Pill Expo in Rapid City, South Dakota, and I am with the founder and president of Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth, Richard Gage. Richard, we're glad to have you today with us.
Thank you, Christian. It's awesome to be here. It's been an incredible conference. The Red Pill Expo is a delight to be at as an audience member or as a speaker. People here are awake, and I like that.
Absolutely. They've taken the red pill of knowledge and they know what's going on.
Yeah.
But there are still many out there who don't know what's going on. But there is a lot of skepticism about 9/11 and what actually happened. And of course, if you start talking about 9/11 and start saying that, oh, it was an inside job or it was a demolition, people look at you like you're crazy. But you are a certified engineer. You've been in architect. You've been in the business for how many decades?
14 years now.
14 years. So,
31 years as an architect.
31 years, over 3 decades as an architect.
And 14 years with AE, Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth.
And you don't buy into the narrative that we've been told that 2 planes hit it and that's it, right?
No, the evidence reveals otherwise. The evidence reveals that these buildings were blown up with explosive controlled demolition. It's absolutely clear, and I'm looking forward to sharing with you and your audience that evidence.
Absolutely.
And the audience here, I'll be speaking tomorrow.
Absolutely, of course. So can you tell us a little bit of the gist of the synopsis of your evidence?
Yeah. We have 3,400 architects and engineers signed on to our petition now, demanding a new investigation into the destruction of all 3 World Trade Center skyscrapers because it is so clear once people actually look at the evidence. We start with Building 7. Now, here's a 47-story skyscraper that on the afternoon of 9/11...
Much hours later.
Yeah, 5:20 to be exact, because the Twin Towers went down that morning.
Yeah, around 9 or 10 a.m. or so.
Yeah, and there was a few fires that were started in neighboring buildings. And so Building 7 is a massive building, each floor an acre in size, 47 stories. Well, at 5:20 in the afternoon, witnesses hear explosions. And then immediately the building drops like a rock straight down, uniformly, symmetrically into its own footprint in under 7 seconds.
In the same manner as the other 2 towers, right?
In a different manner, actually.
Okay.
It's actually surprisingly quite different when you zoom in and look at it. And we'll talk about that difference. But this is a classic implosion. Looks exactly like the old hotels in Las Vegas, where they implode into their own footprint. And of course, that can only be done by placing shaped cutter charges throughout the columns and beams in the building and then detonating them in a very precise order. But 7 years later, we have from NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, who was tasked by Congress to explain these collapses to the American people. They said, well, it came down by normal office fires. Well, there were a few small scattered fires throughout this building, but they can't take out all the columns in the building within a second of each other. Fires don't do that, particularly in steel-framed fireproof skyscrapers, and which is what's required to bring it down in the manner it did at free fall, which means not one of those 80 columns gave any resistance for a third of this building's 7-second collapse. That's absolutely extraordinary. It's proof positive in and of itself, in addition to the video evidence, the eyewitness evidence, and all of the forensic evidence found at the base of this building, which we'll talk about too. So, right, now the Twin Towers are a very different story. We were told that the upper part above the point of jet plane impacts, about an hour to an hour and a half later after the plane impacts, that the upper story, due to weakening of structural steel, the upper story drove the rest of the building down to the ground, both of them, and then destroyed itself. That's the official story in a nutshell. And that can't be true either, because the videos all show something completely different. We're talking about, first of all, the upper story isn't driving the rest of the building down. There's no section of building driving anything down. It's destroyed itself. The videos reveal that very clearly. After that, and hundreds of first responders and others hear explosions. Well, first of all, before there's any collapse, they hear explosions. They're documented, the oral recordings. And then this destruction happens, and then there's additional explosions hurling 4-ton, 8-ton structural steel sections out of the building 80 miles an hour laterally. Gravity works down. Some incredible force is throwing these steel members 600 feet in every direction, well outside the footprint of the building. And that's one of the key differences between this explosion and the implosion of Building 7. And then we have isolated explosive ejections are coming out of the building 20, 40, 60 stories down below what we're told is a gravitational collapse. They're clearly explosions. There's nothing that can be accounting for them except explosions. There's witnesses that are hearing explosions before and during the collapse. Pop, 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 all the way around the building, some of these first responders say. So it's the eyewitness testimonies and the video testimony is clear, but it's the forensic evidence that I like to focus on because it's even more clear. We have, for instance, at the base of all three buildings, molten iron, pools of molten iron, tons.
And that would be caused by simple fires hours after the fact of the attack on the other buildings.
Yeah, the fires, office fires can only get to be 500 degrees, maybe 1,000 degrees, maybe a little hotter than that under ideal circumstances. But we're talking evidence by U.S. agencies like OSHA and many, many others of 2,800 degrees Fahrenheit.
What kind of explosion would be needed to cause that level of heat?
Let's put it this way, it's not jet fuel. Jet fuel is basically kerosene. It doesn't burn any hotter than desks or chairs, office fires. But what can produce those temperatures is thermite, an incendiary used by the military to cut through steel like a hot knife through butter.
And that would not be carried on a commercial airline, of course, right?
No, and it wouldn't be in the building either under normal circumstances. But apparently, because we have the evidence of thermite, molten iron at 4,000 degrees, we have slag on the ends of the beams. We have 45-degree cuts in the beams, which is the columns, which is what they do with controlled demolition to kick off one top column from the bottom part at these severed connections. And we have molten iron microspheres found by the USGS and R.J. Lee, an environmental consulting firm. What does that mean? We're talking about 4 tons of previously molten iron microspheres. Previously molten means 2,800 degrees plus. Iron means the byproduct of thermite. I guess it's time to go back in, but we'll see if we can get through this. And then microspheres, meaning round. How do they get to be round? Well, molten aerosolized liquids form themselves into spheres by surface tension. So molten iron is going to do the same thing under explosive conditions like explosives. And the action of thermite itself is a very explosive event. So these are found cooled, and all the World Trade Center dust comprising up to 6% of some of these dust samples, which they document very carefully in the particle atlas of the USGS in 2006, but they don't suggest or guess where they came from.
I was just about to ask you, where could they have come from?
There's no other possible source other than thermite. The R.J. Lee says, I don't know what these are, but they're formed during the event, not before, by the welders putting the buildings together, not afterward by the iron workers taking the buildings apart, but during the actual destruction of the building. That's very clear and important evidence.
So if the government's narrative is true about how that how to account for that substance being there, wouldn't it theoretically be possible to recreate those kind of conditions using some other building so the government can then prove their narrative is correct?
Well,
Wouldn't
if
that,
someone can do this
like an abandoned
scientific
office
controlled
building?
experiment, that would be nice.
Yeah.
I don't have that kind of money. I'm not sure the government's going to be game to disprove their own theories.
Exactly.
Although they do a pretty good job of that in themselves. NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, has produced reports on all these buildings, and they're systematically full of flaws and fraud all the way through. And we document this at ae911truth.org, and in our documentary 9/11 Explosive Evidence, Experts Speak Out. In fact, one of the top forensic structural engineers in the country, Professor Leroy Hulsey of the University of Alaska, spent 4 years and $300,000 doing a finite element analysis to try to find out how did Building 7 come down. Well, their conclusion is that it couldn't have come down by fire, and they completely disproved all of these steps in the collapse initiation theory that NIST came up with. And their conclusion is that in order for that building to come down the way it did, all 80 columns had to be removed at once within about a second of each other. Any deviation in that pattern of the building would have tipped over. They proved that too.
So do you
Fire
believe,
can't do that.
so you mentioned before that this is only something that the military could have accomplished. So
I didn't say that. I said thermite is used by the military.
by the military, that's what you said.
And it's possible, I guess, that some military rogue agency could have had
Do you think that
gotten access to the building.
Do you
So-
think that a military rogue agency was involved in placing
well, some
these explosives?
rogue group was, because we've proved that thermite is in the building time and time again. We even found thermite in the massive powdered concrete from river to river across lower Manhattan, 3 square miles. This team of 8 international scientists led by Niels Harrit in Copenhagen finds what amounts to millions of these small red-gray chips in all the dust samples. 7 independent samples they collected from different parts, because this concrete powder, which is a story in and of itself. How do you pulverize 90,000 tons of concrete from each tower into powder? But in it, they find these small. They thought they were paint chips, but they're attracted to a magnet. They put them in a heater, a differential scanning calorimeter. At 758 degrees Fahrenheit, they ignite. What do they produce when they ignite? They produce molten iron microspheres with the exact same chemical signature as the molten iron microspheres
Wow.
that the USGS and the RJ Lee found in all the World Trade Center dust samples. So we know where those molten iron microspheres came from. They came from these red-gray chips. Well, what are these red-gray chips?
And where do they come from?
Well, they're composed of iron oxide and aluminum powder, the ingredients of thermite. They're set in a bed of oxygen, silica, carbon, which is organic material used for the expansion that knocks things over in TNT. So this appears to be, because there's peer-reviewed literature on it, a nanothermite, super thermite. So we know what it is, we know what it does, we know it's been documented by Lawrence Livermore Lab, Los Alamos Lab, and others as a very advanced military formula or product. It's not made in a cave in Afghanistan. It is very, very
This is the kind of stuff
specific.
that NASA deals with.
NASA actually uses thermite, more likely the U.S. military and maybe other militaries. So we can answer your question: who makes it? Who's responsible for this? By following that trail. That's not our job. That's the job of judicial bodies who have been given our evidence in 3 separate lawsuits now.
And what's the status of those lawsuits?
We have one for the grand jury petition to the U.S. Attorney in Manhattan, and they have written promising that they will take action on the 60 exhibits we've sent them. But now we've sued them to force them to prove that they've given this to a special grand jury. We've sued the FBI, and that's in
That
process.
takes courage.
Well, we found out that they're pretty corrupt, and we have additional legal hoops we have to jump through with them.
So what can people do to help you with these legal efforts or to learn more information about your organization?
We have a website. It's Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth, but the short version is AE911truth.org. And people can learn about the lawsuits, and we're looking for help with those because they seem to have a way of continuing these hoops we have to jump through. We also have a legal effort to secure an inquest into the death of Jeff Campbell, who was murdered on the 126th floor of the North Tower. His brother, Matt, is in the UK. And so that effort is going through the UK Attorney General. And we are making a film now that's very important about the 20th anniversary and all the evidence that we have put together, the family members, the first responders, all the effort to get the truth out.
Is that being crowdfunded, that film?
No, but you asked the question, and so we're in the process of funding it right now.
Oh, sure.
Through appeals to those who support us. So we're very excited about the film. Dylan Avery, the creator of Loose Change 9/11, which has been seen by 20 million people in the last 20 years, and he's in New York with our staff, making that right now.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, thank you so much. We're glad to have you today on the program, and best of luck with those legal efforts as you continue to uncover what really happened there at 9/11.
Awesome.
Thank you so much. This has been Christian Gomez with the New American here at Rapid City at the Red Pill Expo. Take care.